So, ladies, I'm so excited for this evening. I just want to say thank you to Shannon and Jen Chesak for setting this up for the community. Um, we get so many questions. I mean, when we looked at the last analytics on our Instagram, with the community that was just recently shut down, we had almost 13,000 people in it. And in the community, 87% were women. And so we constantly get questions regarding psilocybin and females and menopause and all sorts of things that I would love just to get the answers to be able to share with the community. And so I am here tonight, not as the host, but I just wanted to introduce myself to everybody. My name's Keegan, and I'm the founder of MindfulMEDS, and I'm here with my colleague Shannon and the other Keegan Downer, my wife, who is actually um,
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
um, she's also one of my business partners and an incredible friend, and she's going to be helping field all the questions that come in. So we want to make this as interactive as we possibly can in regards to questions. I'm not seeing the chat. Oh, there it is there. Okay, excellent. So she's going to be watching the chat. So Shannon and Jen, don't worry about the chat whatsoever. You guys just flow, and Elisa, keep your eyes on it, and that would be wonderful. So let us know where you're from. Let us know, if you don't mind, just out of my own personal curiosity, just let us know how old you are, just because I'm just interested in knowing, who was attracted to coming here tonight. And just a few things before we get started. We got the biggest contest that Mindful Meds has ever had. Um, we're choosing the winner live on this call tonight. My hope is the winner is going to be here on this call. But if not, we are going to choose somebody who's on the call to also win a bundle or apprentice bundle, 3 bottles, basically a 60-day supply of our medicine. And if you're wondering and just learning about who Mindful Meds is for the very first time, we're a company up here in Canada that has been creating the safest, the most consistent, and the highest vibrational frequency medicine that you can find literally anywhere in the world. So we've been on this mission for just about 5 years now. And so if you're in the US and you would like to connect with us, if you would like us to ship to you, we can make that happen, but we do it a little bit secretively. So you have to connect with us on Signal. And for every single person on this call, we've created a promo code to our website just for tonight. And it's the biggest discount that we ever offer our products at. We run a sale about 6 times a year at 30% off. And we're going to offer that to every single person on this call tonight. The coupon code is moments. So all you have to do is put moments into the coupon box. It's going to take 30% off your order. And for the first 20 people that place an order with that code, I'm going to hook you right up. We're with a bottle of our Vitality. So check that out. Bottle of Vitality, free bottle. I believe those are generally $60 Canadian. And I'm going to throw one in to the very first 20 people that place an order. Now, 2 more things, ladies, before I disappear. One of the biggest things that we have going on to close out the year is we're doing a focus group. It's actually more of a study. It's a sleep guided study with the Amanita muscaria mushroom. And so if you're somebody that is struggling in the sleep department, maybe you have underlying PTSD, maybe you have underlying anxiety, maybe you're like me and you're just a chronic overthinker. But it's starting to show up in your life that your sleep is kind of taken away from some of your fruits of life. I want to invite you into this. I've got room for about another 15 people to join us. It's completely free. And I brought in the world's leading expert on this particular mushroom, literally the world's leading expert. And he is hosting a focus group for the entire month. We're kicking this off on October 7th. And let us know if that, is interesting for anybody out there. And Actually, I'm just going to cap it there, ladies, and let you guys get into it. I'm going to disappear. There are a few things that I'll mention at the end of the call for anybody that's still here. But thank you for joining us. These types of collaborations, I really think, are the future of all business. I do. I think community and collaborations are really the future. And so, to wherever you are tonight, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being here. And I'll hand this off to Shannon. Have a great call, ladies. And thank you, Jen, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Stop
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Case. Thank you everyone for joining here, and especially Jen, I know too where you are in Nashville, it's even 2 hours later than Pacific Standard Time. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you everyone for your time. And I'll just get into it here. So our inspiring guest today, she is an award-winning freelance science and medical journalist and author of the Benjamin Franklin award-winning book, The Psilocybin Handbook for Women. She's a speaker, a teacher, an editor, a writer for large publications such as Washington Post, Healthline, Better Homes and Gardens, and so many more. She also fits in being the managing editor at the revered magazine Shift. And on top of this, you can find her conducting workshops, talks, and Q&As across the US. She is a powerhouse in the psilocybin community, sharing stages like the Psychedelic Super Conference with names like Paul Stamets, Dr. Rick Strassman, Paul Austin, and many, many more. Welcome to MindfulMEDS Community Call, Jennifer Chesak. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such a pleasure to me.
Awesome. Now, this is my great pleasure. The second time to interview you, and you just kind of blew my little mind when we first talked. Not just because there's such limited research that's happening out there right now, but that you were one of the first minds from the West to actually come in and unpack what so many people have questions about, but there's limited research. So thank you for your search. I would just love to start off asking, before we get into the science of everything, like, can you share a little bit about your journey to finding the mushrooms, or how they found you rather?
Absolutely. I feel like they found me. It's super weird, but I grew up in the 90s, and back then, like, lots of people were using psychedelics, but in a very underground way, of course. And so a lot of my friends were into mushrooms, but I was really nervous to try them just because I didn't feel like I had the tools to really understand what might be going on in my brain and body, and what if something bad happened, or something that was just really difficult for me to handle. Would my friends be able to like really walk me through that? I just didn't trust it at the time. And I'm really glad that I waited. I waited until being an adult, being a grown up, to try. And really it came about that I've been writing about women's health for quite some time as a journalist. And then I've also been writing about psychedelics in the news as a journalist as well, just as the new research is coming out and things like that. And then just sort of this weird book deal fell into my lap where a publisher wanted someone to write about women's health and psychedelics. And it just turned out that I was the right person for that job. Well, I couldn't possibly write this book without actually digging into having my own journey and going for it. And so I hired a guide and had a wonderful journey. I had some challenging moments, as many people do when they do their first journey, but it was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life, and one of the most profound experiences of my life. So yeah, the mushroom really found me, and I'm so grateful.
Oh, that's amazing. And it always seems that way. It always seems that the mushroom finds us when we're ready for it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you heard here that, Keegan let us know 87% of our kind of community at this point is females. And why do you think that it is that more females tend to gravitate towards this kind of a form of treatment to help themselves more than our male counterparts?
Absolutely. Great question. So when I started to dig into the research to write this book, one thing that came as a surprise to me is that in many cases, more women are using psychedelics more frequently than men. And I write about this in my introduction of the book. But so that was a surprise. But then when I dug deeper, I was no longer surprised, because it turns out there's tends to be a little bit of a difference in the way that men and women tend to use psychedelics. And I don't want to speak in binary terms, in gender binary terms. I'm just repeating some survey results when I talk about this. So sometimes I use men and women, but what I really mean is people assigned female at birth, people assigned male at birth. But anyway, what I learned was that Men tend to turn to psychedelics for recreation. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a great thing. That can be really fun. Women are turning to psychedelics to self-treat, however. And this is where it can be kind of like, wow, an aha moment here. But women are turning to psychedelics to self-treat for things like PTSD, other forms of trauma, depression, anxiety, menstrual cycle issues, menopause, things like that. And this is sort of, these are the same conditions that women are obviously disproportionately affect the female body. And the same conditions that when women go to the doctor, they're often discounted for their pain. There's tons of studies out there showing that when women go to the doctor for a pain condition, they're often not given pain medications at the same rate that men are. So we're often gaslit at the doctor's office. And so it's my opinion that women are turning to psychedelics to self-treat because they're not getting adequate care in the mainstream medical system. Now, I'm not saying that that's the way it should be, and only that it tends to be that way right now. And I have personal experience with that, where I have a condition called endometriosis. It affects 1 in 10 people assigned female at birth. In rare cases, it can affect the male body, but on average, it takes women about 10 years to get a diagnosis for this condition, yet it dramatically disrupts their lives. And if you look at are we funding this condition, the research for this condition? Absolutely not, barely. The National Institutes of Health designated less than 0.01% of its research funding to studying a condition that affects 10% of women. So that's really upsetting. And again, I go back to, this is why women are turning to psychedelics. We're just really behind in science and medicine when it comes to the female body. And the other little thing I like to throw out that can be really frustrating when people hear this timeline, but I think it's important to consider and to understand the context or the disparities in the care that the male body gets as opposed to the care that the female body gets. So in 1998, men got a drug for male sexual dysfunction, and everyone knows what that is. It's a household name by now. It's Viagra, right? At that point in time, the mainstream medical system didn't even have a complete picture of what the clitoris looks like. There's all this internal structure of the clitoris, and I know you have talked about this before. That wasn't discovered until 2005, believe it or not. That was like yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And so that's so shocking. And it wasn't until I think it was 2015 that women finally got a drug for female sexual dysfunction. So that's a 17-year gap from when men got a drug to when women got a drug for the very same condition. So we're really far behind in understanding the female body. And again, all comes back to, why are women turning to psychedelics? Because they're not getting care elsewhere, and psychedelics are helping us.
Oh, wow. That's crazy. 2005 is really just, it's so short ago to not have this be researched. So thank you for shedding light on that. And speaking of things like endometriosis and other illnesses that affect the female body, can you share what you learned from the Johns Hopkins study? I think there's 3 women that participated in that psilocybin study, and you cited in your book. It was really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk about that. You're freezing up a little bit. I just wanted to tell you, I don't know what might be going on with your
okay.
video. Oh, wait, you're okay now. But anyway, I'll dig into that study. I just didn't know if I cut you off when I started to talk.
No,
So,
thank you.
okay, just wanted to check. But anyway, yes, so there's this great study that came out of Johns Hopkins, their psychedelic research center, where so when I started to dig into, like, how does psilocybin potentially affect the menstrual cycle, I really didn't think I would find anything. Well, I did, and I was so grateful that the study was done. So it's just a few case studies. That's like 3 women that went through this study, and so we're still learning about this. But what's seeming to come to light is that three potential things may happen when you use psilocybin and you have a female body, and if you're someone who menstruates. So the first is that you may get your period a little earlier than you expected, and it may be a little bit heavier. And I've heard this from lots of people in their, like in Instagram DMs. People will reach out to me, which, by the way, anyone's welcome to reach out to me in Instagram DM if you have questions later that I don't get to on here. I always try to answer really quickly. But anyway, so that's one thing, is that it may come a little earlier and you may bleed a little heavier. And that's just to be expected. And we can talk, I'll talk about the mechanisms related to that later. But the second thing is that it may re-regulate your period if you've had irregularity, and that can happen for a number of reasons. So endometriosis can cause a little bit of irregularity. Conditions like premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD, and polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS, can cause issues with the menstrual cycle. And so you may re-regulate your period. And then the other thing is that may bring back a period if there's been an absence. And I don't mean related to menopause, but a lot of people, if they're really stressed out, they may skip a period. Or if again, if you've got a condition affecting the menstrual cycle or that's related to the menstrual cycle, that can cause an absence of a period for quite some time, especially PCOS is one of those. And so those three things are a possibility. And I would like, when I talk about that, I always want to share the mechanisms related to that, because I think that's really important to understand. Why would taking a mushroom suddenly affect your menstrual cycle? It's so fascinating to me. And this is where I geek out over things. But we have, thank you. So our menstrual cycles occur along what's called the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis. So what I mean by that is that our brains are essentially communicating with our ovaries. And when one hormone kicks off, it tells another hormone what to do, and then so on and so forth. And this is why we have the follicular phase, which kind of starts out our period. Then we've got ovulation, then we've got the luteal phase, and then we get our period. So this is the trajectory of the cycle, and it starts all over again, right? So that's the HPG axis. We also have another axis in our bodies called the HPA axis, and that stands for hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And so that's concerned with our stress response. And when we use psilocybin, we are activating our serotonin receptors, and it kind of is occurring along that HPA axis, the one controlling your stress response. Now, just by their names, the HPG axis and the HPA axis, you can tell that these axes overlap in the body, especially in the brain. And so it's not a stretch to assume that when we are using psilocybin, that is impacting the axis that controls our menstrual cycle. And likewise, where we are in our menstrual cycle may impact our journey. And what we've learned through some research already, we're still gaining some new research on this, and I'm so excited about it, but estrogen may affect, well, we know that estrogen affects the binding at the serotonin receptor site. We're still learning about what that means, but it's just relevant to know that estrogen does affect the binding at the serotonin receptor site. So it may matter where we are in our menstrual cycles as to when we use psilocybin, which we can talk about as well.
And that's great lead in, because you, in your book, you chat to Indigenous wisdom expert Michaela Delamico, and yes, she, has some things to share that you're not going to find in a Stanford University study. So she shared a little bit about when in your cycle that it's preferred that you should, that's when you should journey with the medicine. Could you share a bit more on that?
Yes, I will. Yeah. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because yes, it's Michaela Delamico, and she goes by Mama Delamico on Instagram. If anyone wants to follow her, she's just wonderful. But I was so grateful to her for chatting with me, because personally, I'm not an Indigenous wisdom expert. So I was grateful that there was somebody out there who had this knowledge and was willing to chat with me for a little bit. So I did interview her. And yes, what she had said is that likely what's best is when we're thinking about our menstrual cycles and when we're going to journey, like doing a larger dose of psilocybin, it's better to do that closer to ovulation rather than when you get closer to actually getting your period, which is when we're in that late luteal phase. And the reason for that she mentioned a few different things. One is that as we get in that late luteal phase, we're very energy depleted, and a journey on psilocybin can also be really taxing or energy depleting. It can also energize us, but like at the same time, it is a thing that the body goes through. And so you're going through too much all at once when you're doing that when you're macrodosing too close to your site when you get your period, closer to ovulation, you have more energy in your body that's available to you, and it's more conducive to when you are, going to journey. The other thing that she mentioned too is that in indigenous cultures, often there's some fasting involved before a ceremony, and so if someone is going to fast before journeying, and that might be just for a few hours, it might be for a couple of days, that sort of thing, that can also be really challenging when you're really close to your period. Whereas we have more energy available to us right around ovulation. So it makes more sense to journey there. And this all makes sense with like mainstream science as well. And I never want to pit one against the other. It's not like mainstream science against indigenous wisdom. We need them both whenever we're talking about psilocybin, because we get so many beautiful practices from indigenous wisdom. And of course, we think of science as this process of, doing something over and over again to reproduce the same results or learn something new. However, that's exactly what indigenous communities have done for hundreds of thousands of years with psilocybin. And so what she was saying really actually made sense too with science, because as we get into that late luteal phase, our bodies become more insulin resistant, and that changes how we manage energy in our bodies. And so, this makes sense as to why we have cravings right before we get our periods, and, why we're like, if you were lifting weights, which I do, but if you're closer to your period, you're going to have a more difficult time. I'm a runner as well, and I always used to get, I don't have a period anymore, but I used to get so frustrated, like getting closer to my period, and I'd be like trying to train for my marathon or whatever. And it would be like, oh, this sucks, but like at ovulation time, I was just like, whoa, I'm a superwoman. And so that again has to do with that energy in our bodies. And then one more thing that Michaela said was, if you are microdosing and you're trying to figure that out with your cycle as well, follow whatever protocol you're going to follow, and make sure that you do that for about 3 months, because it takes about 3 months for you to figure out if it's working for you. So you might want to keep track of your moods and any symptoms PMS symptoms or anything that you might be having along with microdosing, and, following all the usual breaks that you do, but just make sure that you follow the same protocol for about 3 months to see how that's working for you and whether or not you want to switch it up.
That's great advice, because again, there is such limited information online. And in researching to interview you, I think the first time I couldn't find anything until I found you. And that was just like, oh, great. Okay, so this is the leading expert of the West. And we're so grateful to have you on here answering that. So ladies, if you wanted to track and journal maybe your symptoms, sorry, it says I might be unstable here. Hopefully I'm not cutting out. But
You're doing
Jen,
okay.
Okay, great. So Jen, like as the leading Western expert thus far in psilocybin and the menstrual cycle, menopause, chronic conditions relating to people female at birth, in your opinion, can women hack their sexual health, their menstrual health, and navigate through menopause with more ease and comfort using psilocybin?
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, I think we need more research to help us figure out all the specific strategies. Like there's just we have some research now that's like saying, yeah, let's do this. But we need more research to kind of figure out all the different strategies. So like when exactly in the menstrual cycle is perfect for macrodosing? Is there a microdose protocol that better aligns with the female body? Because these protocols that are out there that are really popular were designed by men. And I don't know if they were taking into account the menstrual cycle. So people have been teasing me that I need to create like a protocol for people, for females, and depending on where they are in their trajectory of like, are you still menstruating? Are you in perimenopause or reaching menopause and that sort of thing? And maybe someday I will, but yeah, I do think the answer to your question is yes, we can start hacking things. And I know you want to dig into menopause, so go ahead with that.
Yeah, I'd love to dig into menopause. I can see the Chesak protocol being a thing. I think many of our listeners
exactly
too, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions from ladies here that are just like, what's the science there on menopause? And so many women will come into hormonal shifts that cause anxiety and depression and stress. And how can we utilize psilocybin to help minimize that and make our time as enjoyable as possible through that transition?
Yeah, Love this question. And I think that's one of my favorite things to talk about in addition to the
Great.
menstrual cycle topic. But yeah, so I think it's important to understand some terminology first, because not everyone knows this. But so menopause is just like this moment in time. Like you reach menopause when you've had an absence of a period for 1 year. And then after that, like right away, you're in postmenopause, which seems so weird. It's just like this blip on the radar. But before you hit menopause, you are in perimenopause, and perimenopause can last for up to a decade. I mean, it can last longer than a decade. So, but you can kind of gauge that for many people, it's that age range from like about 42 to 52. You're in perimenopause. Menopause typically hits about 51, 52, and then after that, you're in postmenopause. Many factors can play a role on that timeline for different people. But yes, I think that in perimenopause, we end up having a lot of these classic menopause symptoms. We just call them menopause symptoms rather than using the full term perimenopause. But
Right.
these things can include like hot flashes, worsening or new anxiety, new depression that you've never had before. There are so many symptoms, insomnia, all of these things that can happen in perimenopause. And just to put it into context, like I'm 46 or I'm about to be 46. I'm still 45, just for a little bit. But I'm definitely in the middle of perimenopause. And so I'm right there with you if you're experiencing some of these symptoms. But I do like to put that into context in that, yes, we do have some tools, and psilocybin is one of them, to work through some of these things. So the first thing I always like to talk about is related to menopause. I'll tell you the four things I'm going to talk about first: depression, female sexual dysfunction, trauma. If you've gone through trauma, it can change your menopause experience. So I'll dig into that. And then the last thing would be if we're looking to change any sorts of behaviors that we've developed, and like if we're leaning too much on drinking wine or something like that, psilocybin can be a tool to help us with our behavior changes that can be important during this time. So
Yeah.
the first part that I want to start out with is the depression part. So if you go to your doctor and you're a perimenopausal woman and you're like, I'm really frustrated I'm having new depression and I've never been depressed before, I've never really dealt with this before, the first thing they're going to do is prescribe you a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor or a similar medication, so an antidepressant. There's nothing wrong with these medications. I never want to be like SSRIs or psilocybin, it's one or the other. It's not that way at all. And I'm not saying that psilocybin is the better choice. It's just I want people to be aware of all of their options when it comes to this sort of thing. So selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors can exacerbate another symptom of perimenopause, which is female sexual dysfunction. So I'll cover that later, but I just wanted to point that out, that SSRIs do have side effects, whereas psilocybin tends to have a lessened side effect profile. With SSRIs, we have to take them very regularly, or they won't work, and you will feel kind of crappy if you skip a day. I've certainly been on an SSRI before, and I've done that, and I've not felt great. With psilocybin, if you're microdosing, you can do your protocol, and if you missed a day, it wouldn't really be a problem. And so there's less side effects there as well. What we know about SSRIs is the way that they work is that they blunt your mood, and this is how they work, right? We want to blunt the lows, but not only do they blunt your lows, they also blunt your highs. And so I have some concern with that because I think this is a time in our lives that we really need to be leaning into the things that make us feel really joyful and stuff like that. So I think that's really important to consider. What we know through psilocybin research is that instead of like blunting your mood, it actually makes you feel more okay with your highs and your lows, which is really kind of cool when you think about it. What if we were just okay with even the difficult feelings, So I love that about psilocybin. If you're macrodosing, so taking a larger dose of psilocybin, typically people aren't doing that every day, or we would all just be tripping our balls off every day, right? So that's not happening. But so people tend to use psilocybin, quarterly or twice a year, once a year, whatever it is, in terms of like a larger journey. It's not something that's done like every day. But what we know about that is that it has lasting effects. So research is showing us different timelines, but it's possible that for depression, psilocybin can lessen depression for almost up to a year is what I'm seeing in different studies. It ranges from, a month to a year or 3 months to a year, that kind of thing. So we need more research on that, but I'm really excited to see that it has a lasting effect. Again, with SSRIs, you do have to take them regularly. And again, there's nothing wrong with SSRIs. I don't want anyone to go off of their medications without talking to their doctor and finding out if it's even safe for you to do that, depending on any conditions that you have. So it's really important disclaimer that I like to provide there. But yeah, so SSRIs, I'm sorry, with psilocybin, I do think that there's some potential for it to help with depression. And obviously we're seeing that through studies. And then same thing with microdosing. So I was talking about macrodosing. We still need more research on microdosing, but I'm hearing really wonderful things from people that it is helping them with their depression. So anecdotally, we know that already. Then in terms of female sexual dysfunction, so again, SSRIs can actually cause female sexual dysfunction. Psilocybin does not do that. But female sexual dysfunction can mean many different things. That could be inability to orgasm, lack of libido, pain with intercourse, vaginal dryness. These are all things that are kind of under this umbrella term of female sexual dysfunction. One of the things I'm going to talk about two things that are protective against female sexual dysfunction. It's no guarantee, but these two factors help lessen your risk for it. One is having really good intimate partner communication with whomever you're intimate with, right? The other thing is having a positive body image. So in terms of that body image thing, we are studying psilocybin for help with eating disorders, and we're getting some really good results out of those clinical trials. So I'm really excited about that research. But it turns out that when we have an eating disorder or we have a negative body image, there's some rigidity going on in a part of the brain called the angular gyrus. And it seems like psilocybin lessens that rigidity. And so you're able to kind of change how you're perceiving your body. It's like the way that our mind gives us the picture of our body, essentially. And so that can help with if you have a negative body image, which can happen just for no other reason that the fact that you're going through perimenopause and you're going through some changes that can lead to a more negative body image. So I'm excited that psilocybin is being studied for that, and it's showing the potential to help. And then in terms of, I mentioned having intimate partner communication. We know that psilocybin makes us feel more open and it makes us feel more connected. And that's a function of some of the stuff that goes on in the brain when we use psilocybin. And what I've learned is that it's not that you have to go and do psilocybin with your partner and that's going to somehow be like this big aphrodisiac for you, like oysters or chocolate or whatever. It's not like that. But instead, it may make you feel more connected, even if you go off and do your own journey. And I have my own anecdotal report about that. So I wasn't dealing with female sexual dysfunction, but I went off and did my own journey. Like my husband wasn't with me or anything. And I came back and I was like, I really like this guy that I've been married to for 10 years and going on 11 actually this month. But yeah, so it was like he didn't do anything. Like he was just sitting on the porch the whole time I was gone. But I was changed so much that I felt more like connected to him. And so I think it can facilitate sort of breaking down some walls, and we may build those up over time through our relationship over old hurts or even former relationships. We start to build up some walls, and I always describe it as if the mushroom came in and acted like the Kool-Aid man from like the old 80s commercials and was like, oh yeah, just crash through all my brick walls, So I do see that there's potential there for really fostering some intimacy and then helping in the bedroom as well. Now, we are learning through studies as well that people who use psilocybin report having more satisfying sex lives. So yay, yay to that. The other thing, the two last things I want to talk about related to menopause, then I'll shut up.
No,
The first one is trauma. So this is a serious subject, of course. But what the issue is, and this is so fascinating to me, but if you've had what are called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs is what they're called in scientific literature, you're more likely to have worsened menopause symptoms, which is so fascinating. So if you've experienced an adverse childhood experience, and these could be anything from having a parent who was incarcerated, um, abuse and neglect, your parents having a very violent or contentious relationship, living in extreme poverty, dealing with systemic racism in your community, all of these things can be ACEs, even severe childhood illness. Or if we think about the flooding going on from the hurricane, those children that were in that hurricane will have now had an ACE. It's sad. But what this does, it physically changes your stress response and how your body copes with stress. And it actually causes physical changes in your body that last into adulthood. And then when you get to menopause, that those changes that have occurred can actually cause worsened menopause symptoms. So there's a statistic that it's like 1 in 6 adults has had 4 or more ACEs. So there's lots of people out there with lots of trauma going on, or that they've even past trauma. And if you've had four or more ACEs, you're more likely to have worsened menopause symptoms. So it's just something to consider. And I think when we go to our doctor's offices to deal with, when we go in and we're like, hey, I'm having hot flashes and life is sucking right now because my body is going through all these changes. It's not like your doctor is going to be like, well, what kind of trauma did you go through as a child? They're not thinking about this, and they're not bringing it to your attention. And so I do want people to be aware of that. What we do know about psilocybin, always bringing it back to the mushroom, is that psilocybin actually lessens our psychological response to those traumas. So we're learning that psilocybin has the potential to help us, I don't want to say heal our ACEs, but cope with them in a better way, which I think is really important for many things, but especially in menopause, and if you think, or in perimenopause, and if you think about that time in your life. So perimenopause is a time when obviously people are middle age, and they may be dealing with like sending their children off to college for the first time, or maybe they're still raising small children, or they also could be at the same time caring for aging parents, which is something that I'm heavy into right now, is caring for my very aging parents. And so you have a lot of compounding things going on all at once. And not only that, you have to think back to like the trauma that you've gone through and see whatever ways that you can work through all of these things. And so I think psilocybin is a really good tool for that. And then the final thing, and I'll be brief, is that psilocybin has the potential to, I shouldn't say the potential, we know this, is that it increases our, it causes neurogenesis. We're growing like new neurons and synapses, and, changing our brains through neuroplasticity. And so with psilocybin, it's just this magic mushroom that does this. But that can lead to helping us be able to change our behaviors. And so psilocybin is being studied with promising results for things like alcohol use disorder, opioid use disorder. Again, I mentioned eating disorder, so like binge eating disorder. When we're leaning on substances to cope with our feelings, whether that's food, whether that's wine, whether that's online shopping, whether that's wine and online shopping, guilty. But anyway, when we have these things that we want to change, psilocybin is a really great tool for doing that, because it increases that neuroplasticity, and it's like you're really remolding your brain, and that has a lasting effect. So especially if you do a macro dose, that has a lasting effect. And then if you add microdosing to that, system that you've got going on, or plan that you've got going on, you're kind of tapping back into the things that you learned during your journey and continuing to increase that neuroplasticity. So I think it's just a really great tool to cope with so many things related to menopause and perimenopause.
Wow, that was so great. And that is so informative. And people need to get your book. I really just now want to thank you for the image of the Kool-Aid guy coming in, breaking in a wall when I'm being intimate next time.
Yes.
But what I did want to ask you was about BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And this is, something that we've read about psilocybin really turbo boosting. So could you share a little bit about how that might affect us too, and not just women, everybody?
Yes. Everybody. So yes, brain-derived neurotrophic factor is just, it's so important for so many things, whether it's mood, sexual functioning, even your creativity. And so when we use psilocybin, it increases the expression of brain-derived neurotrophic factor. I guess I could just say the initials BDNF. But that instead of that mouthful, but yeah, it increases that, like, essentially neurochemical in your brain, and that does many things, including adding to that neuroplasticity. But BDNF is so important for creativity as well. And we can activate BDNF in different ways. You know, if you're out just hanging out in the woods, like going for a walk or anything like that, you are likely increasing your BDNF. But it's just such an important thing, especially in menopause and just life in general, that we need to be increasing that chemical or increasing its expression to kind of really expand our minds and creativity and help with mood and such. But yeah.
For sure. Oh, awesome. Thank you so much. And I was reading some of your articles, wealth of knowledge, of course. And you write a lot about adaptogens, nootropics, herbs, essential oils, supplements, like natural ways Mother Nature is helping us to biohack. And we're actually huge here on stacking in our community. Like, we mix basically all of our nootropic with at least organic lion's mane. But can you speak to us a little bit about the science behind stacking and biohacking with maybe more than one good for you product from Mother Nature?
Absolutely. So like stacking can really be beneficial if we think about something like the Stammet stack with psilocybin. You know, these substances work really well together. You've got psilocybin, lion's mane, and essentially vitamin B3. And you know, obviously lion's mane is beneficial for increasing that neuroplasticity as well. And so it's just a great add-on. And then vitamin B3 is important for the way that we convert our food into like the universal energy currency in our body. So it can actually be used for energy. So you can see, like, you can kind of think about how all of these would be really good together for boosting mood and just vibrancy in life. And so I think that's kind of the science behind the Stamets stack. But in terms of, you know, I do think we have so many tools available to us to biohack, and that can include different herbs and supplements and such. I always caution people to make sure that they're checking against any current medications that they're on and any other over-the-counter things that they might be taking and considering their underlying conditions when they're using any sort of supplement and whatnot, just to make sure that they're not, you know, over adding too much to their liver, because there are some supplements that can in too large of quantities cause liver harm and things like that. So I always want to be careful about promoting certain supplements. But I'm a huge fan of stacking, and I'm a huge fan of finding the supplements that work for you and work for your body.
Absolutely. Great. And I'm just curious for you, where do you see the future of microdosing heading? I mean, it's just more and more people are choosing Mother Nature's medicine than, you know, and it's an individual choice that, you know, instead of some pharmaceuticals. But for you, where do you think this is headed? Where do you see plant medicine going from here now that it's just really starting to reach the masses?
You know, it really is. And I'm so excited about that. And I think that we're going to continue to see that come about. And in fact, I'm actually working on a new book. Shh, don't tell anyone, but but it will be about plant medicine and some of these different supplements that can help us get through perimenopause. But yeah, I think that this is where a lot of people are turning. We're realizing that the mainstream medical system, as much as it helps us when we've got like a broken arm or you know, you've cut yourself severely, certainly done that before. It's great in those emergency settings, and it can be a great tool for other reasons as well. So I do have things against the mainstream medical system, but you know what I mean? I know it's beneficial, but at the same time, I get frustrated with the fact that like all we're doing a lot of times is you go to the doctor and they prescribe you something to like put a band-aid on what's really going on instead of working to understand the root causes. And so what I'm seeing from people, or what I'm hearing from people, especially women, is that we're tired of that. And we really want to dig into what is actually causing this thing that's going on in my body. And what are the tools that I have that can empower me to make this better, or make it a better experience. And so I'm seeing so many people turn to, whether it's supplements or changing their vitamin regimen or exercising more, or, whatever it is, just incorporating more fruits and vegetables into their diet. I do think we are going to continue to see people really turning towards plant medicine, including cannabis, including psychedelics, and many other things. So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Awesome. I just have one more question for you, and it's kind of personal, but it's like, what do you wish more people knew about what your work was with psilocybin, or in general? Like, what do you wish more people knew about what you were doing, what you did, the knowledge behind it?
Yeah, I think so people often come to me and they're like, "Oh, what's the research on this, or what's the research on that related to women's health?" And so sometimes the research isn't there yet. So for example, with psilocybin and the menstrual cycle, or whatever it might be. But what I did with my book was I pulled research that we have we have some research on menopause in general. It's not much out there, but I looked at what are the main issues with menopause, how is it generally treated, and then how could we use psilocybin to treat those things. So I'm just drawing, like, I'm connecting dots. It's like I have a situation room, like a Criminal Minds or something, and I've got the string, and I'm pulling the dots from this research study and this research study. You get me in my zone, and I'm just going. But yeah, I think sometimes we don't have the research yet on something, but you can find information from some other topic that helps to inform you about something. So when you're really struggling with figuring something out with your body, don't give up, dig into it a little further, try to connect dots if you can. And the other thing I always want to mention too is, like, if you have a doctor that is not listening to you, fire them immediately. Like, I have done it several times. I've walked out of doctors' offices. I have hung up on people, and I'm not trying to be mean, but like, I am absolutely done with being gaslit at the doctor's office. So if that's happening to you, stand up against it, find a different doctor.
I love that. And I think energetically when somebody is caring for you versus ticking their box, or it's still a business. At some doctors' offices, they still have things to sell, and you are the person buying them. So I think that's really great advice, is just listen energetically. And I love that mushrooms are the OG medicine. Like, we're not discovering something new. We're just reawakening to what has always been there, always will be there for us.
I love
Jen,
that, the OG medicine.
The OG. Jennifer, thank you so much. I know you probably can't hear everyone, but we're going to give you a round of applause before we go to some questions. But
thank you.
Just absolute wealth of knowledge. And beautiful Elisa, I think, do you have questions that our lovely audience has had? Or
yes, I have a few questions here. Amazing to meet you, Jen, and amazing information that you're sharing here. This has been so incredible. So we have 3 questions, and first one is, does resolved trauma still affect menopause?
If you are working on it, it may still affect it to a certain extent. We don't really know this yet through research how much, but if you're working on it, it seems like that can offer some benefits. So if you think about your body in terms of, like, you've got your fight or flight system, right? And then you also have another system that's the rest and digest system. And this is all part of your autonomic nervous system, and how like your involuntary reflexes. So fight or flight is like, heart pounding, getting hot, all that sort of thing. Rest and digest is when you feel extremely calm. So there are many ways that we can tap back into the rest and digest system and turn off the fight or flight. And so the more that you're working on that, whether that's through therapy, meditation, yoga, ceremony with psilocybin, the more that you can practice that flipping the switch from fight or flight to rest and digest, I think that will help with menopause, because a lot of the menopause symptoms that we have active are kind of aligned with that fight or flight system. So hot flashes, for one, it's what's happening in the body is that your body is it's having trouble dealing with any slight degree of temperature change. Normally, before we get to perimenopause, our bodies can adjust without us knowing. In menopause, in perimenopause, that hot flash is related to some simple minute temperature change that you're not really even noticing, but your brain is like, what, and so it raises that fight or flight moment. And if you can, in the moment of a hot flash, be like, okay, just need to remain calm, it will dissipate quicker. So just having that tool, any way that you can get it, should help to some extent.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then the next question we have is, you were talking earlier about your period, ovulating, and like tracking your cycle and things like that. This question was, what if you have an IUD and you don't know when you get your period or you ovulate?
Oh, and that is such a good question, and it's one that I'm still trying to figure out too, because I had a hysterectomy and I gave up one ovary. This was something I had to do related to what was going on in my body, but I kept one ovary, but I don't have a menstrual cycle. It's like, there's a cycle going on. It's just like a secret cycle. And to a certain extent, it's like the secret cycle. To a certain extent, when you have your IUD in, you still have a slight cycle in there. So what I have been doing for myself, again, I don't have an IUD, but is tracking just random symptoms and seeing if there's a pattern. And then I can correlate that to when I still had a period, and then be like, oh yeah, okay, now this part of the month will be when I'm going to probably be in luteal phase. This would be where I'm in ovulation. And so it's not as extreme symptoms that you would be having when you have an actual period if you have an IUD, but you can still probably, if you're really in tune with your body, notice those changes that happen, and you'll be able to see a pattern. So that's why I would say try to track different things, and then eventually kind of discover the pattern, and then just keep track of it on a calendar, and that will help.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And then we've got one more here. How long does a person microdose? And is it something that people do for a short period of time and stop, or can they microdose on a regular basis but take tolerance breaks?
Yeah. So I think there are different methods. So a couple of the protocols that are out there, like the Stamets stack and the Fadiman protocol, people typically follow the protocols and take those tolerance breaks. And many people do it long term. It's kind of really up to you. Some people do it just for a short time, and then they, are off the rest of the year and then come back to it if they feel that they need it. And that's another method. Another method too, which my guide kind of brought to me and I've been loving, is to just use your intuition. So if you aren't using it if you aren't using microdosing to really focus on your period or anything like that, you can just use your intuition. What days do you think you need it? So for me, it's like I might wake up one day and I'm feeling real edgy and anxious and stuff, and so I may microdose that day, and then the next day I'm like, nah, I don't really need it. So I'm really all about that using your intuition on which days do you need it, which do you not, as long as you remember to take breaks if you're doing that intuition and you're not microdosing every single day.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
I love that.
Yeah.
The intuitive microdosing is really powerful, because the more that you rely on your intuition, the more it comes to meet you and tells you, well, here, I think today is a great day, or like, no, you're fine. Go on your day.
Well said. Well said. Yes.
And Elisa, was that all the questions that we had for now?
We've gotten a few more, have just kind of been popping in as we've been chatting and as Jen's been answering questions.
That's great.
There is one from Sabrina, asking, this is more of actually, I guess, a question for MindfulMEDS, but just asking, is there a product or stack of MindfulMEDS you would recommend most for focus and uplifting mood? So I think, myself or Shannon can kind of speak to this.
Modern Connect would be amazing. I know this sounds kind of crazy, but Connect, Jen, is one of our products that has maca powder in it with the nootropic, and it has felt a little bit like ecstasy. Not that I have that, I don't have that anymore, but it has felt like a natural version of ecstasy. And my partner and I just love to have a community night in, have the two of us just have a games night in. And that's been really great for also just femininity, feeling in your power as a woman. And that really hit home for me to answer that. But modern, micro, just depending on your tolerance.
Yeah.
But
and
yeah,
the modern is amazing for definitely for focus. It's one of my favorites if I really need to just kind of get things done. And also our happy days for uplifting your mood. That's another amazing functional supplement that yeah, it's literally like sunshine in a bottle. It's so good.
Yeah.
So that's a really good
Can't
one.
argue with that.
Yeah.
And
well, I can
then-
share where we can find your, oh, sorry. Yeah, no, more question.
Yeah,
and
no,
then just
you
I
finish.
forget. I just don't want to forget where people can find your book, Jen. We had, I think a couple of people were asking where to get your book. Maybe you could, we'll put it all on the replay when we send it out, but maybe you could just advise the best place.
Yeah, so you can buy it anywhere books are sold. So you can get it on Amazon, or you can go to your local bookstore. And even if they don't have it in stock, they can order it. Like it's available. If anyone wants a signed copy, there is a bookstore near me that I will go in and periodically sign books if there's an order that comes in. So if you want a personalized signed copy, or you want to gift it to someone, just you can go on my Instagram, and my bio link has that information. You can order from that bookshop. It's a female-owned bookshop, which I just love, and it's called The Bookshop. And so I just love it. But anyway, I will pop in there and personalize and sign things, and you can find that info on my Instagram link.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry, Elisa, if there's any more questions, or else then we can turn it over to Keys.
There, yeah, we do have a few more questions. If you have time, Jen.
Yeah, of course. I got all night.
Amazing.
She's flowing. This has been so good. I've loved this.
Thank you.
You're incredible.
There is someone asking about kind of two-part question. First question, can you not take the breaks with microdosing?
Oh,
she's asking about without taking a break for a long period of time, without taking a break.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise that, because you will build up a tolerance, and then the microdose will stop working as well as it did before. So I always recommend following, good breaks. And, I do that with just any supplement that I take too. Like I, order my supplement, and then when I run out, that's always a good time for me to be like, oh, this is the break I need from that supplement. And then I'll reorder it, but I get a week break, And so, so I think it's really important with anything that you're doing like that to give your body a washout period is what it's called. And so I think that's especially important with psilocybin, because you don't want to build up the tolerance to where your microdose does not work anymore. But keep in mind that there's some lasting effects. If you've been microdosing, it's not going to just disappear the next day. Like that's still the effects are still in your body and working for you.
Totally. Thank you. And then the second part of that question was, does psilocybin affect my liver in any way?
Ooh, that is such a good question. It definitely is metabolized through the liver, but I don't think that we have any information that it's damaging to the liver in any way. Like, obviously, you don't want to be macrodosing, doing large doses, doing the heroic dose, day upon day upon day. That would probably not be good. But it's in terms of a substance, it's one of the least toxic out there if you're looking at drugs in general. So if we look at something like alcohol, which is extremely toxic to your liver, and you compare that to psilocybin, it's like alcohol is the one that's the most toxic. And there are others too, and then psilocybin and cannabis are the least. And so, again, like everything, in moderation, but I don't think you have to worry that you're damaging your liver in any way compared to, even Tylenol could damage your liver. This is less toxic than Tylenol.
Wow.
I should say acetaminophen. I don't want Tylenol to sue me. Acetaminophen, people.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. Okay, we do have a couple more here.
Sure.
asking for a younger person with endometriosis, how does one use mushrooms to help?
Oh, I love this question because I feel this is an exact example of like connecting dots. So, um, I'm so sorry that you have endometriosis. I know that it's just riding the struggle bus all the time. So first of all, I want to say that. But what I did come across was some interesting research, not related to endometriosis, because of course they weren't studying endometriosis. But what some scientists did do was they took 4 psilocybin extracts and they placed them on cells in a lab. So this wasn't a study done on people, but in a lab. And what they found was that the psilocybin extracts in the cells decreased the cell's expression of inflammation. And so what we know about endometriosis is that when the endometrial-like tissue, it's not specifically your endometrium, but the endometrial-like tissue that gets outside of your uterus and into different parts of the body and grows, it like causes a lot of inflammation. It's like secreting inflammatory cytokines, which are just proteins in your body. They're just driving a bunch of inflammation. And so what they found when they used the extract on the psilocybin extract on the cells in the lab was that it decreased the same inflammatory molecules that are expressed in endometriosis lesions. This was super fascinating to me. So again, they weren't studying endometriosis, but I do think psilocybin can be used as an anti-inflammatory. And so I would recommend microdosing, with something like one of the options that you guys have at MindfulMEDS, and seeing if that changes any of your endometriosis symptoms. There are multiple other things that you can do to lessen inflammation in your body. And, I'm sure that many of those, like, of course, reducing alcohol, limiting sugar, all of those specific things help. Increasing omega-3 fatty acid intake, all of that can be beneficial. But I do think psilocybin, I think we're going to see research in the near future on some of these things and learn if psilocybin truly could help with endometriosis. I am really hopeful about that. We do know that psilocybin is lessening inflammation in the brain, so that's really, really good to know. The other thing with endometriosis is that a lot of times you go to the doctor and they're like, oh, you have you're depressed, and this is causing your pain. This is causing your endometriosis pain, is your depression and anxiety. And they've actually figured out, researchers have actually figured out that that is false. What's actually happening is the endometriosis is causing depression and anxiety. And it's not just because of the pain. They have given mice endometriosis, which I feel really bad for those mice, but those mice then develop anxiety and depression. And so when we think about that, and then you think about psilocybin use and how psilocybin can help with depression and anxiety, it's not going to cure your endometriosis because we don't have a cure, but it may lessen some of the symptoms related to all of that. So just some things to consider. Again, connecting dots that researchers haven't fully connected yet.
Amazing, thank you. And then I think we have time probably just for one more question. Someone was asking about maca root for perimenopause. Are you familiar with maca root for perimenopause?
I don't have a lot of knowledge on it yet, but I do know that it can be beneficial for hormonal balance. So that's kind of the extent of my knowledge on that right now, is that if we've got some hormones that are out of balance, which of course during perimenopause, everything's like a little wonky and roller coastery. And so I've seen research that shows that maca has some potential to help with that. So that's a good thing.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Wow. Honestly, your delivery of this message is just incredible, Jen. Like, you've got such good energy. You're so intelligent. You've really done the groundwork in regards to, bringing the right information forward. And yeah, I mean, if we could all see you, this would be a standing ovation in my books.
Thank you so much.
I loved it. I was over here with a smile the whole time. And yeah, a few things. Congrats on your soon-to-be anniversary.
Thank you.
let us know when your product lands, because we would love to know your feedback on the Mindful Meds products.
Of course.
And I mean, this was just, and Shannon, amazing job with the questions. Those questions, you drove it home with those. So thank you. Elisa, thank you for
Awesome.
fielding. This was a really nice vibe. I just enjoyed, you guys really kind of meshed well together this evening, and I'm just super, super grateful. So as far as like how to give a bundle of our product out, I didn't really come up with a solution to how we can randomly do this. So my thought just on the fly here to close things out is, has anybody had a 10 out of 10 bad day today? Just if there's one person here that I could just send this to has had a 10 out of 10 literally bad day, just say it in the chat and you're gonna go home with the bundle.
We've got a
and
few
if there's
people
not,
here.
we need another solution. Okay, so no one's had a 10 out of 10
No,
bad day.
we've got two,
Just
Three
like the
people,
hospital.
maybe?
or yeah, five. We've got a few people here that a 10 out of 10 bad day.
10. Okay, well, fuck. Now what do we do? So now out of those 5, how can we choose? I'll tell you what. Shit. What have we done here? I should have had a solution for this. I'm sorry, ladies. Can anybody on the fly think of how? Okay. Let's give this the one that it caught my eye here, you guys. There was somebody that was just going to get tested for cancer. Did I read that right?
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maya.
Okay. We're gonna send these to you. All of you guys were gifted just such a blessing from Jen tonight in regards to the knowledge and your time. I know this was just I really enjoyed this, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
And the winner of the free product for the year, which by the way, I didn't intend on like cross throwing things in, but it just so happened that 3 of the biggest things that we have to do to end this year are all happening in the same pocket of time. And this prize was to be given out for anybody that followed us post shutdown of our old community. And so we literally had every single person on the new Instagram was entered. And I got a message from Braden, who's our social media guy. And so this is going to Mr. Adam James. So Mr. Adam James on Instagram. I don't know if you're here. I don't know how many guys were here, but I knew this would happen. So, that's interesting. So he's going to be the winner. So congratulations, Adam. We're going to be sending you 24 bottles this next year, and you can stack whichever products you want. I will work with you one-on-one to make sure that every quarter we're checking in and, we're working through things, and then we'll start mixing up the medicine throughout the year. And I want to make sure, because Jen said she had the time. Did every question get answered real quick? Did we miss any questions? Did you cover the one about pain relief and migraine, Jen?
No.
Oh, I didn't see that.
That was the
That's
next one that came
question.
down.
Have you looked at pain relief and microdosing? And if you have, can you speak to the actual dosage that is helpful for people? Because I know there is some promising research around this. And then pain, 2 really good ones, actually. I'm glad we got this in just right at the finish line. Yeah, anything you can share on those 2 would be incredible.
Yeah, so in terms of migraine, we're just starting to get some studies on this that are in the works right now with psilocybin. We do know that psilocybin tends to reduce the number of attack days, of migraine days in the month. And so I don't know the actual dosage offhand, but I do think that like a general microdose of of what you guys offer, like the 0.05 or the even the very mini microdose that you have, and then the next bump up, those two would probably be accurate for managing migraine. I would also recommend that macrodosing may be beneficial for just changing how our body perceives pain. And so I personally, I have migraine and it's not fun. And when I did my journey, I had a 6-month period, and this is totally unheard of in my life before, but a 6-month period where I was completely migraine free. And so, so I really think that there's some potential here. We don't have all the research yet, but it's coming out there. But I would recommend doing both, like doing a macrodose and then trying some microdoses at different levels. And, following a protocol for that, because you don't necessarily want to microdose on the migraine day necessarily.
Yes.
I would think of it more as a preventative.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because
Yeah.
anybody that's had a migraine, and by the way, I'm lucky because I haven't, but I did witness Elisa have one once when she was in the bathtub with the shower on, crying her eyes out. It lasted a couple days. So I watched the pain in her, and this is actually quite a common question that we get. So can I ask, did you set the intention going into the journey to repair whatever needed to be worked on with the migraine? Was it the intention of
No, it was just something that, it was so weird. Like that was not something that I was even thinking about.
Really?
And then you did my journey, and then the months were kind of going on, and I was like, what is happening? I haven't had a migraine. Not that I missed them, but it was just like, it was a complete absence of migraine for that amount of time. And it took me by surprise. It was just something like, all of a sudden it was gone, and I didn't even think about it until all of a sudden I was like, wow, it's been a full month and I haven't had a migraine. I wonder how long this will last. And it did. It was very lasting. So it was just fascinating to me.
And when you now get a migraine, do you have a certain dose of microdose that you use to try to have you figured out a solution for like current everyday you?
I haven't figured that out yet. I do still I get migraines again. I'm thinking about doing another macro dose to see if that will, like doing an experiment with that and seeing if it will stop it again. But in microdosing, I do think that, if I'm doing it again, I just do my microdosing as an intuition kind of thing. And so I do find that lately my migraines are less intense. They're not like, before it would be like a scene from The Exorcist, not to be, but I'm like vomiting and like crying and like dark room and don't talk to me. And so now I can actually still function when I have a migraine. Like I could sit and work as a journalist. I might not do some really heavy hitting article, but I could write some fluffier pieces or something while I have a migraine. So I'm just thinking that there's a benefit in terms of a preventative, and in terms of like a dose, I would say the whatever I know, like I always think of dosage as in grams, and so the 1/10 of a gram would be what I would do.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, very cool. Some of the feedback that we've gotten around this is that a bit of a stronger microdose for some, been able to stomp out and help support people's migraines. So that's the Inspire that we offer. And that's the thing about this wild, crazy thing about mushrooms, is that we all have these different sweet spots with the medicine. And so it's important to play around and just kind of figure out what works with you. And it's so safe to do so, right? Like incredibly safe to explore. So certainly encourage that.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we're not exactly talking about it at the moment, but with Amanita muscaria is also really good for migraines and inflammation. So I know that we're looking to move that through in our product ads, but just the intelligence of mushrooms in general, it's just, they're magical.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, they are anti-inflammatory. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's I didn't know that about the Amanita. Are you familiar with the Amanita?
Yeah, it's helped
There
me
you
with
go.
sleep. You were mentioning sleep in the beginning before we got started, and like
Yeah.
I have really found that it is beneficial for that because I struggle with sleep, and so that works for me.
Really?
Cannabis and canna, which is another herb that I really love, and yeah, I love stacking cannabis and canna together, and that really helps me sleep too. So
Oh, excellent. Okay, that's
yeah.
amazing.
Hmm.
Have you been using an Amanita tincture for sleep, or how are you taking it?
Yeah, I have been using a tincture. I can't remember the brand. It is out of Canada. Hmm. Yeah, I can't think of the brand off the top
The
of my
one,
head, but yeah.
you know the dose that you've been taking too? I'm just interested in.
Hmm. Yeah, I would have to look. I can't remember it off the top. It's just a dropper full of my
Oh,
tincture.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a
Well,
large dose, just enough to kind of like, I don't know, calm me for the night, soothe me to
yeah.
bed. It's my security blanket.
Yeah. Well, we're
Awesome.
excited about it. We start our kind of
Yeah.
discovery around this, it's kicking off next Monday. And I can't remember how many people we have. I think there's 28. I'd love for 40 people to be in the focus group. So if anybody here is interested, please get the information from Elisa. And then the big thing, and this is crazy. So we're going on our honeymoon tomorrow. And um, three of the biggest things that the company has to do are literally like this week, and then we leave. But the biggest announcement, you guys, that we're going to make tonight, just to wrap things up, is that we are launching a VIP subscription model to the brand. And this is a real give back to our community because, like I said, we offer our products at a 30% discount about 6 times a year. And there's a huge amount of our community that's like me, that just likes to wait for a sale and then kind of get it all at once. And we're now going to allow those people just to be able to access all of our product line at that discount anytime they want. And so the first 400 people that sign up for the subscription model are going to get this discount lifetime. And once those run out, that's going to drop. So that's literally 400 VIPs. Huge thank you to, you said the OG, Shannon. So I'm going to say that as well. And yeah, that is another huge thing. So I can't wait for this to launch. Jen, this has been super entertaining. You are such a breath of fresh air to the industry, and what I love is the science, the data, the research aspect of it all. I think our community loves that too. So I hope to see you again along the way.
Anytime.
Ever
The
up
Chesak
in,
stack.
I'm sure you'll be up in Vancouver at some point.
Oh, totally. I love
Let us know when
Vancouver.
you're there, and we will come and see you and
Okay.
support you. I know Elisa and I are buying a book. Because we'd love an autograph one, Jen, from the
Oh,
superstars.
absolutely. I will pop into that store.
Cool. What a cool evening, you guys. I hope everybody has a great night, and I'll see many of you in the sleep study, and I'll see many of you when we're back in 6 weeks from our trip.
Happy
Shannon,
honeymoon, you guys. You deserve the
Yeah, have a
best
great
time on your
honeymoon.
thank you
honeymoon.
guys. Thank you so much. Okay, have a great night, you guys. Big love to
Awesome.
all of
Thank
you.
you, Jen, so
Night.
Good night.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
So
everyone.
fun.